Okay, thank you so much for watching. So this is kind of crazy. I was filming this to catch the 5 flashes, and it actually flashed 4 times, then 3 times, but before that it flashed 5 times. So I had checked this water heater before I started filming this, and they were all 5 times. So those are all related to the water temperature anyway, which would be tied into the sensor. So this is a code 5, or what I call a code 5, or a 5 flash. According to the manual, it says 5 flashes and with a 3-second pause in between is a temperature sensor fault. And that can be one of 6 things. It says damage to the temperature wire, right? So those are the wires that go back to the motherboard from the thermistor. Temperature sensor resistance out of range. I really need to make a video about that. So there's a way to test the range using an ohm meter or a multimeter on ohms to test the thermistor. It's got a left and a right side on the thermistor, and you test to see if those are the ohms are equal between those. The middle is the ground, left is the left side, right is the right side, and you're just looking to see if those two numbers match. So that's what it's talking about there. Replace the temperature sensor, right? So that's replacing the thermistor. That's number 3. Number 4, if temperature sensor replacement does not correct the problem, verify control is not wet or physically damaged. So on a lot of these Honeywell valves, sort of what I call the well insert, which is the black part there, that holds the valve, and then the motherboard that sits inside the cover on top of that. They started putting these metal caps on the back of them to protect the thermistor, but before they started doing that, there's a bunch of them that are out there that don't have that piece of metal. It's like a stainless steel piece of metal on there, and it will the pressure and the temperature and the sediment will corrode that plastic, and it'll eventually spring a leak, and then that shorts out the thermistor wires. So that is number 4. Number 5 is turn set point knob to off position, turn set point knob to pilot position, and then light the pilot. So it sounds like they're talking about just relighting the water heater. That's under the probable cause. I don't know how that's a cause. That sounds like a solution. Replace the gas valve if 5 flash error persists. So you can replace the valve, but just replacing the valve won't fix that. You have to really just replace the thermistor. But for most people, when it comes to replacing a valve, they don't have access to parts like I do. So I use all the different parts of these Honeywell valves, and so they order a replacement valve. There's the thermistor right there, pretty good shot of it. You can see the wire coming off, that connects to the motherboard, and it actually just slides right out. So I'm trying to slide it out there, but it's still connected in. So I'll pry it loose, and then that just pops right out. So that's got a left and a right side, and you test with an ohm meter at the end. It's very, very small. I'm actually looking for water right there. So I came out and I'm looking for water, and I'm hoping to see water drip out of there so that I know that's what's causing it. I'm feeling it. It feels dry, but it is not working properly. So got the service call for the code 5. It's actually up in Oceanside, which is about 45 miles away from me. So just doing an inspection right there. So that's what the troubleshooting chart in the manual says. 5 flashes and a 3-second pause in between. There'll always be a 3-second pause between any of your error codes. Is a temperature sensor fault, otherwise known as the thermistor, and that's what determines the water temperature. So looks like I have put the replacement thermistor back inside. So I came out to this job, and I just replaced the thermistor. So that's all I did. And now I'm reassembling it here. So popped off the valve, replaced the thermistor, put everything back together, and then I fired it up, and everything was working fine. And then I contacted my contact, who was not on site. So that's my client that hired me. And I had forgotten, but I actually sent him one of my videos, It's the video where I replaced the leaking valve. So there's a service call where a valve is leaking and water's just pouring out of it, and that's what happens eventually when the sort of the well housing finally breaks in the back where it doesn't have that metal to protect it. It'll eventually crack through and then water will just pour out of there because it's under about 50, 60 psi or higher, depending on what your house is. So he saw the video that I sent to him, and he's like, "Hey, did you check the valve to make sure that it's got the metal in the back to protect it?" And I was like, "No." So I end up going back in and pulling the valve, and that's in this video, and replacing that. So that's what's in this video is how to handle a code 5. So one thing you always want to make sure that you do, I don't show it, but you want to shut the water off to the water heater because it's under that 50, 60 psi. And then you want to drain a little bit of water out. Now you can do that on your kitchen sink. Just open up the faucet for the hot water and it'll relieve that pressure. And so now I'm taking a towel. So it's still full of water. So now I'm taking a towel. I'm just going to tuck it up inside the sleeve there of the jacket to try and catch any water that runs down in between the insulation that's going to head right towards that burner assembly. I want to make sure I keep water off of that. And then I just throw a bunch of towels around that on top of that to make sure that no water gets anywhere. And then you unscrew the valve and you can put the new valve right back in. So here I am unscrewing it. There we go, trying to make sure it's coming off straight. And it always wants to run into that burner assembly. It's nice to get that out of your way and completely remove it, but this one had enough clearance for me. So I needed to work on the valve. I didn't have a complete new valve that I was putting in. I wanted to reuse the actual metal valve in the motherboard. I just wanted to replace the black sort of well housing. So I just used a piece of PVC pipe, 3/4 inch, about 6 inch. So this shows the valve without the metal on it. So you can see it right there. It wasn't leaking, but that is sort of the tip of the well housing without any metal. There's one right there in my hand that's got a little metal cap. So that will protect it against that pressure. It will spin around a little bit in there, and people have told me that water gets in, but I've never seen water ever come out of that. And it also handles a lot of the sediment. Of course, the sediment wants to attach to it because it's made out of metal. And that's what sediment likes to do, it likes to bind with metal. That's why it hurts your water heater so much. Once it gets loosened up from the heat in the water, sort of separates the minerals, they will go after your tank if you don't have something in there. That's what those anode rods are for. So those are aluminum and magnesium. It's a sacrificial anode rod, and it usually fits right in the top of your water heater. They last about 3 to 5 years, but I highly recommend if you do any work on your water heater, you service it and drain it, you check and replace the anode rod if it needs it, because that will increase its service life dramatically. All right, so assembling the valve here, putting in the thermistor. It's just the reverse of taking it all out. So it only slides in one way, and it can only go in to one type of well there. And pop the valve in, pop the cover on, get it prepped, and reinstall it. And that should do it for this water heater. Hopefully this video helps somebody out. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and I will respond immediately. So when you're putting in the valve, you always want to make sure that there's the water coming out right there. It's not under too much pressure, so it's maybe half a cup. You always want to make sure you do not cross thread it. So you're in a hurry because it's full of water, but you don't want to be in too much of a hurry that you cross thread it, because those threads are plastic, and the threads inside the water heater tank are metal, and they will sort of overwrite or change the direction of the plastic thread. So once you do that, you're done. You'll never get it to thread straight. So I always take my time. You can always kind of reverse it a little bit before you get it started and make sure you thread it straight. And that's it. The valve is in place and tight.
I just had to come back to do that. Oh, that's okay. It's not your fault. That's all right. I'm glad I did it.
Okay, got a service call for a code 5. So that is the temperature sensor failure. This is the thermistor, or the water temperature sensor. So I replaced it, and it came up normal operation. Blinking once every 3 seconds. Got a nice yellow flame going on in there. That's because the condensation is dripping. So that happens during startup, before the water heater hits operating temperature. So that should go away in about 20 minutes. Just got to make it through that cycle. Somebody's been working on this water heater, because I can tell the parts are from a Bradford White, plus this wiring job here at the end. Not my doing. Anyway, appreciate you watching the video. Consider a thumbs up. Leave any comments if you have any questions at all, or just want to comment on the video. Any suggestions for videos, and consider subscribing. Appreciate you watching, and have a great day.